1941, a date which will live in infamy.
It's hard to believe that nearly 8 decades have passed since that fateful morning on December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor was attacked. Aloha, I'm Pamela Young. More than 16 million Americans served in our armed forces during World War II. For Chinese Americans, the story of their service to our country was nearly forgotten. Their stories of heroism and sacrifice are only now being told and recognized by a grateful nation. The Chinese American military experience began during the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865. A small number of Chinese served in the Union and Confederate forces during the bloody conflict on American soil. During World War I, Chinese Americans enlisted in the United States Army to fight in the European War.
Over there, send the word over there.
By late 1918, the doughboys of the American Expeditionary Force engaged the enemy. Chinese American soldiers distinguished themselves on the battlefields of France. By the mid-1930s, Chinese Americans were about to enter a new kind of war.
This is the Battle of China. This, the fearful beginning of a new kind of war. This, the first mass bombing from the air of a helpless civilian population.
The Japanese invasion of China seemed unstoppable. Chinese Americans stepped up as volunteers to fight the Japanese forces and to help save a desperate China. America was preparing for the winds of war as it enacted its first peacetime draft in October 1940.
For the first time in our history, we began mobilizing an army while still at peace.
This is the Army, Mr. Jones. No private room for telephone.
In Chinatown, the rush is just as great and enthusiastic as elsewhere.
Chinese American draftees were among the first. The Hawaiian Islands, one of the most strategic American military sites, now became the target of aggression as the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
America was now at war. The first island battle in the Pacific was fought at Wake Island. From December 8th to the 23rd, civilians aided the Marine and naval personnel against overwhelming Japanese forces, which eventually forced them to capitulate. 64 Chinese American civilian contractors were captured and sent to prison camp for the duration of the war. 22 of these men were from Hawaii. After the decisive victory at the Battle of Midway, American forces began its offensive against Germany and Japan. Chinese American personnel were now engaged in combat operations around the world. They fought at Guadalcanal, the China-Burma-India Theater, from North Africa to Sicily, from the Normandy invasion to the German Rhineland, from the Pacific to the Mediterranean and European theater of operations. Chinese Americans helped to defeat our enemies on all fronts. Up to 20,000 Chinese Americans served in World War II. in spite of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. 1 out of every 5 Chinese in America served their country. They served in every branch of service: the Army Air Forces, the Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marines. For the first time, Chinese American women enlisted in the United States military. The small but significant number of Chinese American women in uniform helped to break the racial and gender barriers. They were assigned to a variety of stateside duties, and some were sent overseas. 2 Chinese American women flew with the Women's Air Force service pilots. Women on the home front stepped up as war workers at aircraft factories and naval shipyards. They served as Red Cross volunteers and also created the first Chinese USO canteen for servicemen. With the defeat of Germany and Japan, World War II was finally over. The men and women in uniform returned home. Utilizing the GI Bill and their veteran status, they ultimately helped to establish a modern, vibrant post-war Chinese community. With the advent of the 75th anniversary of the ending of World War II, an idea for congressional recognition for our Chinese American veterans began with the efforts of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance. They led the way for the idea of a congressional medal for our veterans. It was to become a reality.
You know, when I started this journey with Chinese American Citizens Alliance back in 2016, we knew really that time was against us with the aging World War II veterans. We really wanted to give our World War II veterans a final honor. We had to start locating the families and survivors to get as many signed up as possible. You know, one of the goals of this project was to get the children and grandchildren involved to really see that they had made a great sacrifice for this country. Throughout their lives, many Chinese dedicated themselves to prove that we are as patriotic as any other groups who served in the military.
We wanted the medal to depict that Chinese American veterans served in every theater of war and fought on air, land, and sea. Additionally, we wanted to recognize Chinese American women that served during World War II. The common occupation was a nurse, found in the Army, Army Air Force, and the United States Navy. Although 40% of the veterans could not be citizens, they were proud to serve as Americans.
The Congressional Gold Medal is the highest award given by Congress to civilian individuals or groups, and what it really means to veterans as well as the families is final recognition for all the contributions made by Chinese Americans in the U.S. Armed Services.
We also remember the Chinese Americans who gave their lives in service to our country. Francis B. Y., Captain, 34th Infantry Regiment, United States Army. Captain Y is the only Chinese American recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Hua Kao Kong, Lieutenant, 353rd Fighter Squadron, United States Army Air Force. Harold K. Lee, Corporal, 60th Infantry Regiment, United States Army. David G. Lem, Lieutenant, 499th Bomb Squadron, United States Army Air Force.
War is a time that tries the souls of men and women. And World War II was a time when every patriotic soul was needed. America's 20,000 Chinese American veterans were there, and they stood for America and earned today's thanks, the thanks of a grateful nation. And so, to you, America's Chinese Americans veterans, thank you and God bless you. And God bless as well the nation that stands today, because on a dangerous yesterday, America's veterans, including America's Chinese American veterans, stood for her.